Welcome to the new Cyber Frontier, bringing you the latest news on the local Colorado economy and initiatives that focus on the development of cybersecurity economics. You don't have to be a computer or cybersecurity expert to get plugged in. Your host, Chris Gorog, brings it straightforward, asks the tough questions, and brings the cyber world to a level of understanding for everyone. Chris is personable and opens up with our guests on issues we all would like to see addressed. You can find us on the web at www.newcyberfrontier.com. Now join our host as he introduces the topic for today's New Cyber Frontier.
This is Abe Thompson with New Cyber Frontier. I'll be hosting our show today from Secure Set here in Colorado Springs, where I serve as the campus director in our cybersecurity bootcamp programs. I also have in the room with us our regular host, Chris Gorog, and we are privileged today to have two guests with us from Spideroak. First of all, we have in the room and in the flesh, Mr. Matt Erickson, who's the Director of Client Services and Technology for Spideroak. And then on the phone, we have Mr. Derek Huyser, who is the Corporate Development Lead for Spideroak. Gentlemen, it is a delight to have you with us. Go ahead and start with you, Matt. Welcome.
Oh, great to be here. Thank you.
Delightful. So you flew out from Chicago.
I did.
Indeed. What do you got family back there? Or?
Yeah, family, big old house I just bought. And
perfect.
So it's a nice, happy life.
Perfect, and I hope that we provide you an escape from the humidity here. That's
well, the best part was the free upgrade to a Mustang convertible I got at the airport.
Hate it when that happens.
Yeah, life is so hard right now.
So I would encourage you to take the Pikes Peak Highway. You know, once the sun comes back out, to head up to the top there and enjoy that. And on the line here we have Derek Huyser. Hello to you. Are you back in Chicago holding down the fort?
I am. It turns out I hate beautiful scenery and I like the endless flat land here in Chicago, so I stayed back for this trip.
Understand. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, given that America the Beautiful was written from our mountain here, you're absolutely right in terms of the beautiful scenery. It's either that or maybe Matt's just better at working out a boondoggle, as we'd call it in the Navy.
Don't tell my boss.
It turns out we usually travel in the same vest, so it's kind of awkward sometimes when we show up together.
And perhaps no one's ever seen the two of you in the same place. So well, gentlemen, it's a delight to have you with us here. If you would pick who you'd like to start. Tell us a little bit about Spideroak's sort of mission and focus.
All right. Well, I think I'll begin.
Sure.
Spideroak was started in 2006 with the core principle that you should be able to trust what you put online. We started with a backup product that's, we think, pretty interesting on desktop backup, but it's as exciting as desktop backup always is. And we started working on some other systems and really took a step back and took a look at the security world out there. And really what it comes down to is we've been watching the news as much as everyone else has.
Sure.
And we've been watching the data breaches as much as everyone else has. And we feel that there's just kind of this disconnect between the trust that is required to have our institutions run on the internet,
right,
and the existing controls that are available to enable these institutions, everything from the garbage pickup to the doctor's office to school to taxes to the military. It all runs on the internet.
Internet of Things, right?
The Internet of Life.
Yes. Oh, that's an even better term.
Our institutions need better trust and control over what is online.
Sure. Derek, Matt's initial intro there is full of what's clearly a great vision. From your perspective in sort of the corporate development side, I assume it's been pretty popular in drawing the attention to your products and your services there at Spideroak.
It really has. I mean, we've been pleasantly surprised with how many people kind of believe the same thing that we do, which is, we fundamentally need to rethink how we approach the protection of our data and our knowledge as a way to safeguard our institutions. And I think Matt hit on it. Institution is kind of a broad word. It could be everything from a political system to a business enterprise to some other form of organization. But across the board, they're all at risk because we've become so dependent on this resource, we generally refer to as knowledge. And without some better fundamental safeguards, things could deteriorate from where they are today. And we're really happy that people have started to kind of embrace this approach to thinking differently about how we, from the ground up, start to put better safeguards in place to protect those institutions.
Indeed. Let's take a quick break and check in with our sponsor.
We'll be right back with the rest of today's show right after these brief messages from our sponsors. Over 3 million data breaches happen every single day. That's over 2,000 records being compromised every minute. So often, we focus on securing web data access. But what if the attackers are already inside, having gained direct access to your storage through data management software? When it comes to communications that go directly into your storage devices, make SNIA your first line of protection. SNIA's conformance testing limits outdated communications that are known to be used by attackers. It works continuously behind the background to make sure your storage is protected. To find out if your data is truly secure, visit our website at www.snia.org/cybertest.
Hello, this is Abe Thompson, broadcasting on New Cyber Frontier podcasting, from Secure Set here in Colorado Springs. I have the privilege of being in the room with our guest, Mr. Matt Erickson, who's the Director of Client Services and Technology for Spideroak. And on the line, I also have Mr. Derek Huyser, who's in corporate development there. With me in the room is our regular host, Mr. Chris Gorog, who takes quite an interest, of course, in blockchain and other subject matter. Now, Derek, you had just kind of finished up a discussion of the value of intellectual capital and the risks of that value being degraded. You want to pick that point up a little bit?
Yeah, so right now, our entire society is driven through knowledge.
Sure.
And that's accelerated at such a rapid pace. There's been daily increases in the rate of the generation of knowledge that is then fed back into our institutions.
Right.
Our election system, our public utilities, education, healthcare, military, political decisions. I mean, I've testified in front of several legislatures across the United States.
Wow.
And every time you go into a committee room and go onto a floor, everyone has iPads with special software for voting.
Right.
Information is brought up, and like even private chats between senators.
Sure.
And all of this system depends on knowledge being sent over computer networks.
Sure. And a modicum of trust
Right.
in the way in which that information is transferred, for sure.
Right. And I was describing the gold, and now we need a Fort Knox around it, basically.
That gold standard. And the Fort Knox around a society, and you hinted at this earlier in our pre-show discussion, a society that values its unfettered flow of information.
Yeah.
And there's that age-old tension between unfettered flow of info and security. Mm-hmm. And so how do we convince people to balance the two?
Well, the thing is, people are always going to try and do their job.
Sure.
And outside of security professionals, as a security professional yourself, I'm sure you're aware that people will figure out either how to do their jobs or be lazy.
Yeah.
But either way, let's just assume the best in people. They want to get stuff done, and they're going to find the most efficient, quickest, powerful way to get their job done.
Sure.
And that is where the unfettered flow of information comes from. And when we start getting into the effects on institutions, we can't think about security as something that you then add into the equation later on.
Sure.
And that's really where I think we get essentially hackapalooza going on. Every day you hear about another major data breach. There's just today news dropped of a major hospital system that lost track of 56,000 patient records. There's a Navy contractor building something shiny and new for the Navy that
Oopsies.
Oopsies that. There's another report that came out about Russians meddling in the upcoming elections.
As I hear this, as Matt is sharing this, Derek, I imagine that in some ways makes your job of developing those corporate partnerships and support a bit easier because of everything that's been constantly in the news. Am I accurate?
That's very accurate. I mean,
Sure.
We're fortunate that we can help them solve some of those tricky problems.
And there are some unique components here. We had just talked about the unfettered flow of information versus security, but then at the same time, these same people that want the unfettered information also have the right to data control and the right to management of their data. What have you seen in that regard, either of you?
Well, so right now there's a few different ways that people are approaching this. One way is just bigger firewalls, bigger monitoring systems.
Sure.
If you want to think about it, it's like building a bigger castle, and now we have some very good masons working on castle walls.
Okay.
And we have CCTV cameras examining the outside of the castle walls, and we have advanced AI detection systems to keep an accurate inventory of all the stuff that's being looted from the castle when the invaders break in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing is, the attackers have moved on from castles. The attackers aren't building catapults. They're not even building airplanes. They're building ICBMs.
Sure.
An attacker has to, in the current model, the attacker has to win once.
Yeah.
And so there's lots of different ways that people are really just starting to wake up and look at this. And the biggest trend that I think has really big potential to win is decentralizing authority.
Sure.
Being careful with who actually has the authority over a bit of data, who has the authority to control it, view it, read it.
Right.
And getting that right now, for example, in a typical enterprise, your domain admin, there's spear phishing notes like, oh, they found that this particular domain admin was a big fan of the NCAA tournament. They sent him a spear phishing email. He clicked on it. Bad bit of JavaScript in the browser. Boom, domain admin's popped at work. And now complete control of the enterprise is gone. But why should the domain controller or the email admin have access to the CEO's email?
Right, and you talked about that a little bit earlier too, that so many people up and downstream have access to this data, and they're on paper restricted by HR controls and non-disclosure agreements, but those don't necessarily work as ironclad.
So we've just spent quite a few years centralizing.
Yes.
And it sounds like
We're disrupting.
We're talking about going back the other way again. So tell me how and why?
Well, so the technical term is decentralizing authority because you want to get it out of single points of failure. In this case, a directory server or an email admin or an admin with your cloud vendor that one guy getting into compromise there might compromise your enterprise and everybody else. And instead, putting the authority with the people who basically should have the authority, who taking those HR policies and NDAs and actually meshing them with reality,
Sure.
as opposed to just
So the people who own the data have access to it. So we're talking about individualizing privacy.
exactly.
This is uncanny.
And the technology for this today incorporates the great buzzword of our era, blockchain. A distributed ledger, so that way, instead of trading tokens of value, you can use a distributed ledger, so that way everyone knows who actually has authority and who doesn't. And in doing so, make it impossible for somebody else to try and shimmy their way in there or use authority greater than what they've actually been given over a set of data.
Sure.
So how do we handle that? The administrator wants to have that overview, that full picture. And we've gone towards that for the last couple years, and now you're kind of taking it out of that power person's hands.
Does he really need it, though?
Does he? I'm not talking about whether it's needed or not. I'm talking about once you attain power, releasing it.
Yeah, sure.
That's a good question, and I think a lot of that does boil down to how we manage organizations. But there's a lot of admins that I've talked to, that Derek's talked to, that me and Derek have talked to, and that other colleagues of ours have, that they understand that with big data comes big responsibility. And they're sitting there thinking like, oh shoot, if something happens to me that I'm unaware of, I could potentially be on the hook for getting fired, lawsuit from the company. Like there's some big consequences for possibly involuntarily really screwing up.
The buck stops here, traditionally.
And I was just kind of playing devil's advocate. I'm on board with you on that one. But it's kind of like if you're in the middle of a company that was hacked just recently, you're going to lose your job, right?
Yeah.
More than likely.
Especially if your name is CISO.
We're going back to the point where we're saying, maybe we don't want to have all that power and access. Maybe we want to open up the governance process, I call it, so everybody can see what's going on and everybody has access to their own stuff.
Yeah.
And we'll individualize that.
And stop shooting, some of these super talented folks in the face that may or may not have been the direct liability there. Now, Matt, earlier you made a comment. It was something effective. In this current model, in this current climate, you only have to lose once. I'd actually like to direct my question to Derek on that. Derek, it kind of sounds like that's really about sort of perception, and does that impact you in sort of your realm in corporate development?
Well, it helps us in how we kind of talk about and explain the technology approach that we employ, which is, right, we're working against the concept of a single point of failure. So as Matt mentioned, if you have an administrator, right, that becomes a large risk simply because if you compromise that individual or their account, you now have access to the system as a whole.
Let's pick that back up.
At one time, and you have access to an entire set of data. Right? And what we're suggesting is, it's really hard to win in that environment where you have to win 100 out of 100 times in order to be successful. The odds are distinctly not in your favor. We want to move people to a place where they have a better chance of succeeding, but even if they do lose, which in some cases they are going to lose, we're only giving up a small percentage of the data. And in order to do that, we need to use compartmentalization. And we do that through cryptography and blockchain. But the point here is that you can still retain a level of control, but when you do inevitably lose the battle somewhere, you're only giving up a portion of your data, which a portion is far less valuable to the whole.
Sure.
So you're now requiring an attacker to win multiple times, and you're making them attack a much smaller surface. So if you
expose themselves a little bit,
pretty dramatically increase your chance of success as a defender.
Yeah, it's not if, but when you get attacked. Let's take a quick break and check in with our sponsor.
We'll be right back with the rest of today's show right after these brief messages from our sponsors. Over 3 million data breaches happen every single day. That's over 2,000 records being compromised every minute. So often, we focus on securing web data access. But what if the attackers are already inside, having gained direct access to your storage through data management software? When it comes to communications that go directly into your storage devices, make SNIA your first line of protection. SNIA's conformance testing limits outdated communications that are known to be used by attackers. It works continuously behind the background to make sure your storage is protected. To find out if your data is truly secure, visit our website at www.snia.org/cybertest.
All right, we're back with New Cyber Frontier. My name is Abe Thompson here at SecureSet here in Colorado Springs, podcasting with our guests from Spideroak. And Derek, you just kind of provided some insights on this. You can only lose once environment, and kind of changing the entire paradigm such that we force the hackers to come out of their holes more often, exposing their tactics, techniques, and procedures, and limiting the amount of damage they can do at any one time and with any one attack. So where have you seen the victories, Matt, in your realm in terms of the technology development to actually really make this fly?
Well, I think the big thing coming down is blockchain style technologies, or just blockchain itself. There's a lot of general purpose blockchains. Ethereum's out there, IBM Hyperledger, Spideroak's own platform, and you can leverage more general purpose blockchains or blockchains built for this type of purpose, like ours, to really manage how people interact.
Yeah.
Because of that, if an attacker, even if they get into the server, they can see the blockchain. They can see transactions on the blockchain. If you use cryptography to manage end-to-end encryption, they can't see what's been put on the blockchain.
Right.
And any changes that they try to make, all the clients involved in the system will immediately go, whoa, what's up? There's something weird going on, and I'm not going to accept this.
Anomalies are more easily exposed
Yes.
in this case.
Yeah, in this case, a fragile system is more resilient for the actual end goal of solid security.
And it's not some massive change that you've had to recreate the system. You've just really changed the approach to securing.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, it is an architectural difference than how we tend to think about software today.
Right.
Today, everyone wants to centralize. To your point earlier, they want to put your data on servers. They want, in the consumer space, they want to mine them for analytics, but that's an entirely separate conversation.
Yeah.
But you know, we talk about web apps. And part of that is, I think there's, it's easy to develop a web app, and it's easy to monitor what's going on, because corporations do need to have DLP going and other factors. But there is, when you store the data differently in a way that has inherent compartmentalization, inherent assurances of integrity and authority, and then you start adding on your other legal and other requirements. Then you have security baked in at its core.
Sure.
And then you choose how you open up to share for regulatory compliance purposes.
Sure.
You choose how to share with the outside world, as opposed to basically trying to grab a bunch of cats
Sure.
running around in the middle of an open field and then try and gently corral them together.
Yes, herding cats analogy.
So tell us, when we hear blockchain, everybody thinks this Bitcoin, right? Tell us the difference of how you're approaching and using blockchain from what people might know in a cryptocurrency.
So a cryptocurrency is a very specific use case for a blockchain. It's a very important, it's a founding use case for blockchain. But just as the internet existed for decades before the web, it's not always the first use that gets to be the biggest use.
Sure.
And in our point of view, we can start looking at the core of a blockchain. What is a blockchain? Distributed ledger among a bunch of different clients. You group transactions into a block, you sign the block, and you add that to a hash chain.
Right.
And if you try to go back and change history, that's going to pose a problem.
Sure.
Now, full public blockchain, there's going to be some partisans who think public blockchain is the only type of blockchain. You have some sort of random leader election to actually stamp each new block as certified into the chain.
Sure.
A lot of private platforms, for example ours, we currently don't do that. We're working on adding a random leader election that doesn't require mining. But in this case, you bring down, if the central server goes down that authorizes blocks, it's an availability issue, which is a big issue, but it's not the end of the world. The actual integrity and authority in the system is baked into the chain itself. And the clients, if it sees its chain, and then the server comes back and says, no, wait, the chain's actually different, the system is still going to break. And the biggest thing between, say, most blockchain use in the cryptocurrency world and us is we store a different type of data. When you think about tokens, they're discrete units of value that you're moving from one point to another. And that's not as much as what we do. One of the really cool things that we do is essentially group management through a chain. You can do this through more general purpose, quote unquote, business friendly chains like Hyperledger as well. So you can essentially come up with a group of people, and now you have this group on your chain. Every time you change this group of people, that's a new transaction embedded into the blockchain for everyone to both see and is now immutable. And the current state of who has access to data is simply you run through the chain, you compute the results of the chain, and now you have that set, and that is the truth.
Sure.
And that is shared and distributed and decentralized between all the participants in the system. and every time you add somebody to, say, a message channel or a folder that you're sharing with them, you add somebody into this set of authorized users.
Sure.
And every time you remove somebody, they're removed out of this set as separate transactions. So that way you have this inherently auditable, solid proof of who actually has right to be there.
Sure. In our pre-show discussion, you told a great story of how you started with a principles-based platform, and you started that way first, and then you did sort of a rear-view mirror check, and wait a minute, that's just like blockchain. I love that because what I think it says is that the technology, the changes, the environment demanded this sort of capability to come online. And so comment on sort of that process, that story, if you will, and Derek, chime in, please.
Well, we're at Spideroak, we have ideals. Like that's a big thing that's been driving the company for over 10 years. And like I said, about what we view the world, or how we view this institutional body of knowledge, we simply figured that we needed these sets of behavior patterns.
Sure.
And as technologists, we've grown a little weary of having the word blockchain applied to iced tea companies and things like that. So we didn't just said, like, I know blockchain, and grab a SDK. We built software that solved authoritatively the problems that we see in the world.
Sure.
And it just so happens that there's a bunch of transactions grouped into blocks and certified onto a hash chain and distributed amongst all the participating clients.
And it wasn't just conventional wisdom or trendy wisdom, it's prudence.
Yeah, we had a set of philosophical and technological requirements to meet our higher philosophical requirements, and we built software that matched that, and we accidentally ourselves a blockchain.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
Where are you at? Is this product already available? You sell it to customers. Where is it at in its life cycle?
So right now, you can go to our website today and get a chat product called Semaphore, which is kind of a version 0 of this larger platform that I'm talking about. For example, it uses some different storage underneath the hood, and it's like a blockchain where there's only one transaction per block. So it's very similar, but it's not quite our next gen platform.
Is this a cloud service?
It is a
download?
cloud service.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a cloud service where you download the client to use it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Much like using Outlook to access email. Although I really don't want to be talking about Outlook here, but it's
just like Kleenex, Xerox, etc. Yes.
Yeah, it's a program that you download onto your Mac, Linux, Windows PC, your mobile phones, and it participates on this platform. And we're both moving Semaphore, we're bringing in a file share system, so that way it's easy to replace a bunch of other cloud services in the space with something that has this built-in authority. And we're coming out with an SDK, so you can basically don't dream it, be it.
Derek, how has this principles-based development story played into the narrative that you share when you're working to build partnerships?
Well, I think it's an important narrative that that Spideroak has always been built on kind of these core principles of no knowledge and ensuring users that their data is under their control. It's been fortuitous for us that we happened, as Matt said, to kind of stumble into blockchain is the best architectural approach to take this concept to group applications. So that the timing has worked out well for us. But it tells a really kind of distinct story from what you see with the cryptocurrencies and these public blockchains, where one of the primary benefits of a public blockchain is censorship protection. You have this idea that a central authority can't prevent people from participating. And when we apply that to an organizational lens, right? We want to take a slightly different perspective, which is to say, actually, an organization should have discrete and complete control over who participates in the access to their data. So we're able to use our fundamental approach where we kind of landed on a place where we implement blockchain, but for a very different purpose. And that contrast is also been very important for us in telling the narrative, because we're not interested in, kind of public access. We're actually interested in the opposite, which is, as an organization, you should have discrete control over who can access your data, and the decentralized principles behind blockchain are a big component of what enables us to do that.
Sure. So, in terms of a call to action, what do you challenge people to do if they want to join this revolution where you can both enjoy, unfettered flow and security and your rights to data control and discrete control all at the same time? What's the next step for someone out there, Matt?
We encourage people to look at, as we define knowledge, right? With the data that you have, the intellectual property, the commands that you issue, the authority you kind of give to people, and the processes that you have. Which of those are really the most valuable that come with the greatest potential risk if they are compromised, right? And start to think about how you can treat those differently as a starting point. We're not suggesting that people, think about redoing all of the software that they use and all of the processes that they've implemented.
Indeed.
But start with the things that are the most impactful to your organization. Start with the thought exercise of where are the things that, if I could, lock away and only give a small number of people access to, people that, whose names I can write on my hand and who I trust.
Yeah.
And if I can do that, I would have a much stronger, more resilient organization. That's where we encourage people to start. And if they go through that thought exercise, they almost invariably come up with, a handful of things, and that's where we like to start our discussion. Right. Once we have those, how do we make that actionable for you? But these principles apply pretty straightforwardly if people have gone through that exercise and just kind of rationalize for themselves what's the most important thing that they have.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it here. Spideroak, our friends today, our guests, have challenged us to a fundamental rethink, to focus again on decentralization of authority for the purpose of actually doing a better security. And definitely we can appreciate that. My name is Zabe Thompson. I'm here on the new Cyber Frontier. We've been here with our guests, Matt Erickson, who's Director of Client Services and Technology, and also Derek Huyser, who's Corporate Development at Spideroak. Matt, Derek, it's been a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you very much.
Indeed. It's
been great being here.
Thank you so very much. This is Abe Thompson from SecureSet in Colorado Springs. This is the new Cyber Frontier.
The views or opinions expressed during this podcast are not those of Colorado Technical University.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of New Cyber Frontier. Remember to get involved. Often we think that someone else will handle privacy and security in the virtual world, but you are the only one truly in command of your virtual fate. Join our mailing list so we can keep you informed of breaking news and new releases. If you have an idea, if you have a question that you would like to hear answered, or if you want to get involved with our efforts, reach out to us at newcyberfrontier.com. We also encourage you to visit our sponsors' links, as they are the ones that really make this show possible. I want to thank each of you for supporting the show, and we look forward to seeing you back for the next episode of New Cyber Frontier.